Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Are you feeling sleepy now?
I don't know, Baba. I was tired the whole day and feeling very sleepy.
All right. Have you heard the story of Prophet Uzair alayhi salam who slept for 100 years?
100 years? How can anyone sleep that long?
I think you should go to sleep now. I will tell you his story tomorrow.
No, Baba. My sleep is gone. I want to hear his story now. Please tell me, Baba.
Are you sure?
Yes, I will never be able to sleep till I hear the story of this prophet. Sleeping for 100 years? That sounds so amazing.
All right, inshallah. I will tell you the story of Prophet Uzair alayhi salam now. Now listen carefully. Bismillah. The story of Prophet Uzair alayhi salam. Prophet Uzair alayhi salam was a saint and a wise man. He lived after Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam and before Prophet Zakaria alayhi salam. One day, as usual, the Prophet was going to visit his farm on his donkey. By around noon, he came to a small town that was ruined a long time ago, and no one lived there anymore. All that he could see was the collapsed buildings, dusty walls, and well, a lot of human bones. The Prophet had been traveling all morning and the sun was scorching hot now. So he decided to take some rest in that town. He got down from his donkey and sat under the tree. He was very hungry, so he took the figs and the grapes he had in his basket and started eating them. He sat there for some time and then he stood up to see around. He saw that the walls still stood up, were very old and shattered. He thought that they could fall down any time. He then saw human bones lying around. How will Allah bring them back to life? He said out of curiosity. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heard what he had just said, he got angry and decided to show the Prophet his power. He sent the angel of death to Prophet Uzair alayhi salam. The angel of death took the Prophet's life as he had been told. The Prophet lay there lifeless for a long time. It is said that the Prophet lay dead for about 100 years. The Prophet's donkey died in the meantime, and lots of things changed during those 100 years. One day, God decided to wake the Prophet from his death, and he sent the angel of death again to the Prophet. The angel arrived and revived the Prophet back from the dead. When the Prophet opened his eyes, he didn't know what was going on. "For how long did you sleep?" asked the angel. It was late afternoon and the Prophet had gone to sleep early afternoon. "I must have slept for a day or part of a day," he said as he was confused. "You remained asleep for 100 years, said the angel. The Prophet was shocked to hear that. He realized that it was by the power of God that he came back to life. The angel then revived the Prophet's donkey as well. The Prophet then started traveling back to his home. When he reached his native place, he was surprised again. The whole town had changed by now. There were new shops, new streets, and he couldn't recognize anyone. And when he reached his house, he could not recognize anybody there either. "I am Uzair," he told them again and again. But they shook their head and told him that they don't know him. He then went to the crippled old woman sitting outside. He realized that she was blind as well. "Isn't this the house of Uzair?" he asked her. "Yes, it is," she said. "But people have long forgotten about him. He was gone around 100 years ago." The Prophet realized that this old woman was actually his maid during those times. I am Uzair, he told her. Allah had taken my life and now after 100 years, He has returned it to me. The old maid was able to recognize the voice, but she was not sure. So she told the Prophet, Allah used to answer Uzair's prayers. If you are Uzair, then pray to Allah that I might see and pray that I may walk. The Prophet agreed. He prostrated and prayed to Allah. Then he stood up, placed his fingers on her eyes and gently massaged them. He took his hands and said, "Get up by the power of Allah." It was a miracle. She could see everything now. Then she stood up by herself and she could walk all by herself. The old woman was overjoyed. She told the Prophet happily, "Yes, what you are saying is the truth. I bear witness that you are Uzair." She then asked the Prophet to come along with her, and they went to the assembly of Israelites nearby. The Prophet's son, who was 118 years old now, was heading the assembly. Even his children and grandchildren were part of the assembly. The old maid called out to them, "Look at him! Do you recognize who he is?" But no one recognized, and they shook their heads. "He is your father, Uzair. He is back." "You are lying," his son said. "How can he be back after 100 years?" "Look at me," she said. "I am your old maid. Was I able to see before? And when did you last see me walking? Your father prayed to Allah for me, and here I am, walking and seeing." The Prophet's son stood up and approached them. "My father had a black mole between his shoulders," he told the Prophet. "We will believe you if you can show me that mark." The Prophet showed him the mark, and his son realized that he was indeed his father. Everyone came and embraced the Prophet. They were happy that he was back. When the Prophet was asleep, Nebuchadnezzar, the evil king of Babylon, had destroyed all the copies of Torah to destroy their religion. No one remembered the Torah now. The only copy left in the world was buried somewhere, and that only the Prophet knew. "Allah is truly great," one of his grandsons said. "Only you can tell us where the last copy of the Torah is." Prophet Uzair took the people to the place where he knew where the Torah was buried, and he took out the copy. The people were very happy to see the book they thought was lost. The leaves of the book had rotten by now, and the book itself was crumbled. Prophet Uzair alayhi salam sat under the shade of a tree, surrounded by children, to copy the book. He carefully copied the words from the script and made a new book. The Prophet died when he was 40 years old in Israel.
MashaAllah, that was such a great story. Sleeping for 100 years? It's a great wonder.
I'm glad that you like the story, my son.
What was the name of that ruined town where the Prophet had slept?
Some say that the town was Sairabad. Alright, now are you ready for the questions?
Yes, Baba.
Why did God put Uzair alayhi salam to sleep?
It was because the Prophet had doubted the power of God for a moment.
And how long did the Prophet sleep?
He slept for 100 years.
Did people recognize the Prophet when he came back home?
No one recognized the Prophet as he was gone for 100 years.
And who was the first person to recognize him?
It was his maid.
Very good. Now tell me, why were there no copies of Torah in Israel?
The evil king of Babylon had destroyed all the copies of Torah in Israel except for one.
Who copied the Torah?
The Prophet did.
MashaAllah, you gave me all the right answers.
Thank you, Baba.
You can go to sleep now. Good night.
Good night, Baba.